In the heart of a small Ghanaian village, where the red earth roads twisted between mud houses and the sound of children's laughter echoed in the evening air, lived a humble farmer named Kwame Mensah. He was not a wealthy man, nor was he educated, but he carried a wealth far greater than riches, the love for his only daughter Amma. From the day Amma was born, Kwame had devoted his life to her happiness and survival. He gave up his own meals so she could eat. He sold his precious goats so she could attend the village school, and when the rains were poor and his harvest failed, he would still find a way to provide for her. Every dawn, as the first rays of sunlight pierced through the tall grasslands, Kwame could be found sitting under the ancient baobab tree at the edge of the village, whispering prayers to God for his daughter's future. His neighbors often saw him there, lips moving slowly, hands lifted to the sky, asking only that Amma's life would be better than his own. Amma grew up surrounded by her father's sacrifice and quiet resilience, yet as she became older, her heart began to long for something beyond the boundaries of village life. She despised the dusty, uneven roads that always left her feet dirty. She disliked the leaking thatched roof of their small hut, which could barely keep out the rains during stormy nights. She looked at her father's rough hands, scarred from years of farming, and in her young mind, she promised herself she would never live like that. To Amma, the village represented struggle, limitation, and an endless cycle of hardship that she could not accept for her future. One morning, as the rooster crowed and the sun stretched across the fields, Amma made a decision that would change everything. Standing before her father, she spoke with determination in her voice. "Father, I cannot stay in this poor village forever. I am going to Accra, the city, where opportunities are greater, where life is brighter, and where dreams can come true. One day, when I am rich and successful, I will return for you. I promise." Her words carried the confidence of youth, but behind them was also impatience, a desire to escape what she saw as the chains of poverty. Kwame's wrinkled eyes filled with tears, though he tried to hide them from his daughter. His heart ached at the thought of her leaving, but he understood. What father does not want to see his child rise above him? So even though pain clung to every corner of his soul, Kwame blessed her journey. He placed his trembling hand on her shoulder and whispered, "Go, my child. If this is what your heart desires, then may God guide you and protect you. And remember, no matter how far you go, this village, this tree, and this father will always be waiting for you."
With those words, Amma left. The days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. She never came back. Letters never arrived. News of her was never heard. The promises she made faded like dust carried away by the wind. In the silence of those passing years, the villagers began to talk. Their whispers were sharp, filled with judgment and disappointment. She abandoned the very man who gave her life. How could a daughter leave her father to suffer alone in the village? The gossip spread from one household to another until the whole community saw Kwame not just as a poor man, but as a poor man abandoned. Yet Kwame never defended himself, nor did he curse his daughter. Instead, he carried his loneliness with quiet dignity. Each evening when the sun dipped behind the horizon and the air filled with the sound of crickets, he returned to the old baobab tree. He sat on the same wooden stool he had used for decades, gazing down the road that led out of the village, waiting for a familiar figure that never came. His neighbors pitied him. Some shook their heads at his misfortune, and others said he was foolish to keep waiting. But Kwame's heart refused to give up hope. He believed that one day Amma would return. He believed she would remember the sacrifices he had made, the prayers he had offered, and the love that had shaped her childhood. But as the seasons changed, as rains came and went, as festivals passed without her, even his strong spirit began to bend under the weight of time. His back became weaker, his eyes dimmer, but still his heart whispered the same question every night as he sat alone under the baobab tree, looking at the dusty road stretching toward the horizon. But would Amma ever remember the father she left behind?
Amma's life in Accra, Ghana's bustling capital, was everything she had ever imagined as a young girl under the shade of the baobab tree.
The streets shimmered with the reflections of sunlight off tall buildings, the cars that passed by gleamed like polished jewels, and the city hummed with a constant rhythm of ambition and opportunity. Amma herself had transformed into the very vision she had dreamed of, her skin glowing under the sun, her hair perfectly styled, her wardrobe filled with bright Ankara dresses that spoke of elegance, confidence, and modernity. Parties and gatherings became a part of her routine, invitations arriving almost daily, each one promising laughter, fine food, and the kind of social connections that could only be made in the heart of a thriving city. She married a businessman of considerable influence, a man whose smile carried charm and whose handshake commanded respect, and together they lived in a painted house with shining tiles, wide windows that caught the morning light, and a courtyard where decorative plants swayed gently in the breeze. Within this life, Amma had achieved everything the village girl she once was could have dreamed. And yet, despite all the luxury, the celebrations, and the accolades, a quiet unease lingered in the depths of her heart, an emptiness she could neither name nor escape. Whenever neighbors or colleagues spoke of family gatherings or about returning to their hometowns for festivals and traditional celebrations, Amma grew silent, her laughter dying in her throat. She avoided the mention of the village entirely, as though even thinking about it could pull her back into the memory she had tried to bury. She did not speak of her father, Kwame Mensah, not because she had forgotten him entirely, but because the thought of him waiting alone under that ancient baobab tree, watching the road that never brought her home, filled her with a quiet, gnawing guilt that she could not face. And so she moved through the city's golden streets, among shining cars and towering buildings, keeping her distance from the past she had once promised never to forget. One evening, as the city lights shimmered against the darkened sky, and the distant sound of traffic mingled with music from nearby celebrations, Amma stood alone before her ornate mirror. The reflection staring back at her was elegant, confident, polished, yet there was a shadow behind her eyes, a subtle unrest that even her husband could notice. She whispered softly, her voice almost lost to the hum of the city. "Does my father still wait for me under that baobab tree?" The question floated in the air, fragile yet heavy, carrying with it years of unspoken regret and the faintest hope for reconciliation. She felt the weight of time pressing against her chest, the memories of her father's prayers, his sacrifices, and his unwavering patience tugging at her conscience. Without thinking twice, Amma rushed home, her hands trembling as she hastily packed her bags. Clothes, a few essentials, her small keepsakes, none of it mattered as much as the urgency that surged through her veins. Her mind was a whirlwind of questions, guilt, and anticipation. Could it truly be him? Was her father alive after all these years? Had he waited, hoping against hope, beneath the old baobab tree she had promised to return to but never did? Each thought collided with another, filling her with both fear and longing. The city around her blurred as she moved through the streets, past honking cars, street vendors, and colorful market stalls. The bustling energy of Accra contrasted sharply with the quiet, rustic world of her childhood, yet it could not distract her from the call of her past, the call of the man who had sacrificed everything for her. The journey back to the village was long, along the dusty roads that twisted and turned through open fields, under the blazing sun and over small streams. Memories flooded Amma's mind with every mile. She remembered her father carrying her on his broad shoulders to school, his strong hands steadying her as she struggled along uneven paths. She recalled the gentle lull of his voice telling her bedtime stories by the fire, the warmth of his smile, the rough texture of his hands planting cassava, harvesting yams, and tending to the small garden that had fed her when no one else could. Each memory brought a pang of sorrow, mingled with longing, as she realized how much she had missed, how much time had been lost, and how the village had shaped her even as she had tried to escape it.
Her husband, sensing her quiet turmoil, approached with a gentle hand on her shoulder, his eyes searching hers with curiosity and concern. "Amma," he said, his voice calm but probing, "you never speak of your village. Why?" His question lingered, honest and unjudging, yet it forced Amma to confront the feeling she had long avoided. She opened her mouth, perhaps to speak, perhaps to explain, but no words came. The memories of dusty roads, leaking thatched roofs, and the small wooden stool under the baobab tree seemed too distant, yet painfully near, and she could not summon the courage to speak them aloud. She felt a mixture of longing, guilt, and fear. Longing for the familiarity she had abandoned, guilt for having left her father alone, and fear of what she might find if she returned. Amma walked away from the mirror, the city lights reflecting in her eyes, her mind racing with questions. The world around her remained vibrant, bustling, and full of promise, yet inside, a quiet storm of emotion raged. How had her father fared after all these years? Was he even alive?
During the vibrant Homoa festival in Accra, where the streets were alive with music, drumming, and the scent of roasted maize and palm oil dishes, Amma wandered through the crowds, admiring the colors, the laughter, and the sense of communal celebration that pulsed through the city. The festival was a time of joy, remembrance, and tradition. Yet that day, Amma's mind was elsewhere, distracted by her own restless thoughts. As she passed a small group of women chatting animatedly near a food stall, she overheard words that made her blood run cold. "Have you heard?" one woman whispered, leaning closer to her friend. "The old man Kwame Mensah has returned to the village square." Amma froze mid-step. Returned? From where? Her heart began to pound violently in her chest as if it had been waiting for this very moment for years. She could not process the thought. The village, the dusty roads, the baobab tree, all of it had seemed so far away, almost like a dream she had tried to forget. Yet suddenly, it was real, and the news struck her like a thunderclap in the middle of a bright, noisy day. When Amma finally arrived, the village seemed almost unchanged, yet alive with whispers, anticipation, and subtle excitement. Children ran barefoot over the sun-baked earth, their laughter mingling with the smell of roasting plantains and the rhythmic chatter of women preparing festival dishes. Men gathered in small groups near the village square, leaning on walking sticks, talking in hushed tones about events long past. And in the very center, under the shade of the massive baobab tree, stood an old man. He was frail, trembling slightly, and supported himself with a walking stick. Yet there was a certain presence in his posture, a dignity that commanded respect despite the years etched into his face. His eyes, though dimmed with age, seemed to hold memories and wisdom, the echoes of a lifetime of sacrifice and love. Amma's eyes widened, her breath caught in her throat. Could it be? Could this fragile, trembling figure really be the father she had abandoned? The man who had waited for her under the baobab tree, praying day after day for her well-being? Her legs felt weak, and for a moment the world seemed to shrink around her, focusing solely on this one figure. Every step toward him was a step into the past, a confrontation with her guilt, her regrets, and the possibility of redemption. The villagers, sensing her hesitation, fell silent, and the rhythm of the festival seemed to pause for just a heartbeat, as though the entire village was holding its breath, waiting for the answer to a question that had haunted them all for years. Was this fragile figure truly her father, or just a stranger who carried the same name?
Amma pushed through the dense crowd, her heart pounding in her chest, each step heavier than the last, as if the years of absence and guilt weighed on her legs. The villagers' whispers and quiet gasps filled the air around her, yet she felt as though the world had narrowed to one point, one figure in the distance, the frail old man standing under the familiar shade of the baobab tree. As she drew closer, he lifted his head, and in that instant, Amma's eyes locked with the familiar gaze of Kwame Mensah, her father. He was thinner, his shoulders slightly hunched, and the years had carved deep lines into his face. Yet when he smiled, it was the same smile she remembered from her childhood, warm and reassuring, carrying the essence of a love that had never wavered. The world around her seemed to blur. The shouting children, the roasting plantains, the bustling activity of the festival, all faded into silence as she took in the figure of the man who had given her life, who had sacrificed everything for her,
who had waited patiently, praying and hoping for the day she would return.
"Father," she whispered, her voice trembling as she fell to her knees in front of him, the dust rising softly around her. The villagers gasped at the sight, many shaking their heads in disbelief. Over the years, they had judged Amma harshly for leaving her father alone in the village, for chasing the city's promises while abandoning the very man who had nurtured her with love and sacrifice. Now, seeing her kneel in humility and genuine remorse, some covered their mouths in shock, others wiped tears from their eyes, and a hush fell over the square as the gravity of the moment sank in. Kwame's hands, trembling from age and years of waiting, reached out and rested gently on her head, a gesture of blessing, forgiveness, and unconditional love. "My child," he said softly, his voice quivering but strong, "I prayed for this day. I prayed that you would return, that your heart would find its way back to me, and that we would stand together once more." His words, simple yet profound, carried the weight of decades of longing, sacrifice, and patience, echoing in Amma's ears like the tolling of a distant bell, marking a moment she had never imagined would come.
Amma broke down completely, tears streaming down her face, mingling with the dust and sweat of the day. "Forgive me, Baba," she sobbed, her voice choked with emotion. "I forgot where I came from. I thought the city was everything, the tall buildings, the parties, the wealth, but I left behind the one person who gave me life, the one person who shaped me, loved me, and prayed for me every single day." Her words, heavy with regret and honesty, hung in the air, touching the hearts of everyone who heard them. Around the square, villagers, too, began to weep, men lowering their heads to hide their tears, women pressing their hands to their mouths to stifle sobs, and children standing still, sensing the gravity of a reunion that was more than just a meeting of father and daughter. It was a testament to the enduring power of love, patience, and forgiveness. The drums of the festival, which had been beating rhythmically in celebration of tradition and harvest, slowed almost imperceptibly, as though even the music recognized the significance of this moment. The laughter and chatter faded into silence for a heartbeat, leaving only the soft sigh of the wind through the baobab leaves, the distant caw of a bird, and the shared heartbeat of a village witnessing a miracle. Every gaze in the square was fixed on the two figures kneeling together, father and daughter reunited, years of pain and separation dissolved in tears, and the simple, unspoken understanding that some bonds are unbreakable, no matter the distance or time. Amma clutched her father's hands, feeling the rough texture of his skin, the weight of his sacrifice, and the depth of a love that had never abandoned her even when she had abandoned him. And in that moment, she understood, more fully than ever before, the cost of leaving, the value of family, and the beauty of forgiveness. But why had Kwame returned after so many years of suffering?
Kwame held his daughter's hands gently, the old worn skin of his palms meeting the smooth, youthful hands of Amma. And in that moment, the weight of years, separation, and unspoken longing passed between them in silence. He looked deep into her eyes, those same eyes that had once been full of ambition, restlessness, and the desire to escape. And he finally spoke, his voice soft yet steady, carrying the authority of love and the depth of a lifetime of patience. "Amma," he said, "I left the village not because of anger, not because I wished to punish you, but because I wanted to test your heart. I wandered through the lands, I struggled through the hardships of life, and yet God brought me back. I wanted to see, would my daughter still recognize me? Would she remember the sacrifices, the prayers, the love that had shaped her life? Or would she forget me forever, lost in the promises of the city, the wealth, and the comfort that she chased?" Each word flowed slowly, as though he was pouring out decades of emotion, giving voice to a story that had remained unspoken for too long, and Amma could feel every word deep in her soul.
Her knees trembled, and she fell forward, clutching his feet with desperation and reverence, tears streaming down her face as she sobbed uncontrollably, the emotion she had buried for so many years finally breaking free. "Baba!" she cried, her voice thick with guilt, love, and relief. "I failed you once, never again. From this day I will care for you, as you once cared for me, with all my heart, my soul, and my every breath." Her words were a promise, a vow, and a healing balm to the wounds of the past. And Kwame, though frail, smiled through his tears, the corners of his eyes crinkling in the way Amma remembered from her childhood. A smile that carried forgiveness, pride, and the purest form of unconditional love. The villagers around them could no longer hold back their emotions. Men shook their heads, unable to comprehend the endurance of a love so strong and the patience of a father who had waited through the years without bitterness. Women dabbed at their eyes with cloths, their faces wet with tears, as the story of sacrifice, testing, and eventual reunion unfolded before them. Children, small and wide-eyed, stood quietly, sensing the importance of what they were witnessing. A lesson in family, the power of forgiveness, and the cost of abandoning the bonds that tie us together.
The festival sounds that had once echoed through the village square, the drums, the singing, the laughter, all seemed to pause, replaced by a reverent silence, as though nature itself was holding its breath in acknowledgement of this moment. The air carried the scent of roasted plantains, fresh cassava, and the earth after a recent rain, grounding the reunion in the richness of the village life that had shaped Amma, even as she had tried to escape it. Every gaze was fixed on the pair, father and daughter reunited, and every heart present felt the invisible threads of love, regret, and redemption weaving through the square, connecting the past and present in a tapestry of human emotion that words alone could never capture. That day, Amma made the decision to take Kwame to the city, not as a burden, not as someone to be hidden away, but as her greatest blessing, a living reminder of love, resilience, and the roots from which she had come. In the city, he would be cared for, cherished, and celebrated, not for what he had lost in the years apart, but for what he had given, unconditionally and without hesitation, throughout a lifetime. And as the villagers watched the pair depart, the lessons of the day settled into their hearts. They remembered the story, whispered from one neighbor to another, carried forward in conversation and memory. A child who forgets her roots will one day return to the soil, but if she finds forgiveness, she will rise again. The words lingered in the air like a gentle wind through the trees, a reminder of the enduring power of family, of redemption, and of the love that can heal even the deepest wounds. Amma's tears had become the village's tears, her joy, their joy, and the story of Kwame and his daughter would be told for generations, a testament to patience, faith, and the unbreakable bond between parent and child.
I hope you enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe my channel, and also share this video with your family and friends. Let's see the view of weather looking so great. There are many clouds in the sky because today weather lives like enjoyable, and I make video for you. If this video give you a lesson, please like and share this video with your family and friend, because they give lesson from my video. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.